dysfunctions because you're just too much sugar in the system.
Okay.
And it is that part that's going to drive you not being able to focus. And not to mention, if you eat that much sugar and if you eat that much rice, that would make you fall asleep.
Right.
Carbohydrate makes you fall asleep easier.
Yeah.
So if you always come back at lunch and say, oh God, I'm just going to get those off a little bit, that is usually because you have, first, a little too much. Second, probably need to cut down on the carbohydrate.
Right.
Eat a lot more fiber instead.
My name is Nobin John, your host. I believe that we live among superheroes. Many a times we walk past them not knowing because of our busy schedules. This podcast is my journey to find such individuals, bring them on board, and have meaningful conversation to unravel the biohacks and lifestyle hacks that they have used to optimize well-being and realize their fullest potential. In many of these hacks will lie the solution for us to look better, perform better, and live longer. Welcome to the Zuperhuman Podcast.
My guest today on the Zuperhuman Podcast is somebody who has helped thousands of people in Asia, especially in Hong Kong, to achieve states of heightened focus that has actually helped people to multiply success and wealth. And when I say wealth, I don't mean just the monetary side of things, but what I also intend is the wealth that resonates with happiness. And today, happiness in many formats is wealth to cherish for. So, without further ado, let me welcome on board Cavan. Cavan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, buddy. And it's a pleasure to have you on board because I have heard so many things about your ability and your skill and your perspective on things that you have actually used. And mind you, I mean, from what I've heard is from your past experience also to actually today help people who are actually struggling to really amp up their states of living in order to achieve success.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just trying to share.
Well, I think this is a great platform to start. So before we dive into your area of expertise, which is focus, which I think is an area that I struggled with personally. And I'm sure many people in Asia living that crazy, busy Asian lifestyle that we proudly endorse many times struggle with. Yes. It is draining, but let's park that aside and let me understand, or let me figure out, like, what is the passion? What is the drive behind all this that you bring today onto the table? What's your story?
Well, I guess it's all started from the fact that my mom one day told me, hey, son, I have pre-type 2 diabetes. And mind you, this lady is 5'4", about 90-ish pounds.
Wow.
A very, very big lady. And I'm just scratching my head. How are you going to get type 2 diabetes? I don't get it, the math at all.
Something that actually we all, it's not just you. I guess a lot of people ask this question when they're diagnosed with this situation.
Exactly. And I know that she had a lot of gut issue. And that's when I started thinking, okay, maybe I need to look a little deeper. What exactly is the issue? Because I do not want her to start taking pills or getting insulin shots. So that's when I dive into a lot of research, and that's when I randomly bump into different type of integrative medicines. And along the way, functional medicines is where it resonates with me the most. Little do I know, fast forward 8 years,
wow,
this is where I am right now. Super passionate about all the things I learned along the way that improve a little bit of my mom's life and also my life as well.
Well, looks like it was also healing yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So just for the audience, I'm just going to dive into that one question. You said you found functional medicine. Mm-hmm. What is your definition to functional medicine or your perspective on functional medicine?
Well, I think it's a little bit more on integrative medicines, but with a bit more directions and also come along with different type of biomarkers that I never heard of in traditional conventional medicines. From that perspective, I started thinking, because my background is more like a scientist. I think like a scientist.
Yeah. You were also, from our conversation before, a product specialist in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I was at product engineering kind of mindset. So for me, from a very scientific back approach, in medicines seems to make the most sense. And looking at things more holistically seems to make sense as well. So that was the approach that I took. And functional medicine just offered that to me. And from there, I have a better understanding on human body as a whole.
Right. I think the whole beauty about functional medicine is like how we're able to look at the body as a whole and not like as a situation that we're actually faced with, which is a disease state.
Right.
And what personally I love about this whole thing as a National Board Certified Functional Medicine coach too is how you look at creating some strong pillars such as exercise and movement, diet, rest, sleep, relationship with yourself and with the environment around you as tools where you can completely rebalance the chemistry of life.
Yep.
And stand on a platform where you can thrive.
And I think for me right now, what you just said literally are the pillars that when I work with them. Because if you haven't figured it out, well, a lot of my clients have not figured out the rest component, have not figured out the food component, have not figured out the exercise component.
Right.
Then stress management component is usually on the wayside anyway.
Right.
So I don't even need to talk about the relationship with self piece. So those are the typical 5 that I do need to address, especially when someone that is having mental fatigue.
Right.
Or maybe having some gut issues. A lot of the times it's just they can't focus or sleep. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick on that word that you just used, which is what this podcast is going to be all about. Focus.
Yes.
Okay. So it might be the most stupidest question ever asked on this podcast, but hey.
That's not a stupid question, man.
I'd agree. I'd agree on that, mate. What is focus? Because a lot of us think about like focus as this ability that we're born with and we have a right to in the world that we live in. But but we're still struggling with it. I struggle with it.
Right.
But what is your definition of a focus or a focus state?
Well, I guess for me, focus is more a solution.
Wow.
Itself. It's a solution to peak performance, a solution to optimum learning state, a solution to create a deep, meaningful relationship with others.
Right.
As a solution to that. By self-focus, it should not be something that is very natural to all human beings. I would say Homo sapien in that sentence,
right.
As a matter of fact. Because focus state requires to have a lot of energy expenditure on one area,
right?
The frontal lobe.
Wow.
And your 2% of your weight is here,
right?
But that expends 25% of the energy, what you eat, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, 50% is really going into here to do maintenance work, and then you now have to think about focus, which is very expensive. So it's very unnatural.
Right.
Focus itself is unnatural. That's number 1. Number 2, we are wired to look out for one thing, things that don't kill us.
Right.
So we kind of, by default, focus on distraction, just in case those are a threat to us.
Right.
So just from that 2 perspective, focus itself should not be a innate state for many people.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love the whole conversation here because what I love the most there is you just looked at it as a solution. A solution is something that we seek. And then another beautiful perspective that you laid on this is that as humans, as Homo sapiens, as smart Homo sapiens, we're always looking out for things that, let's put it in simple words, like, are threat to our lives. Our brains are wired to look out for threats. And as a result of which, we're looking everywhere. We're processing so much information to see, hey, is that a threat? Is that a threat? What's the level or what's the state of threat that I'm encountering at this stage? So what I understand from this whole thing and what I would love the audience to take away from this is that as humans living on this planet, we're always in a state of alertness, if I may say, which by default may not mean focus.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I would say yes and no, because we need to be able to draw on that focus as we need it. So it's like on-demand actions.
Nice.
Because back in the days, when you don't have food, you got to go hunt or collect. You got to be focused. But at the same time, when that action is done, when you walk away, you should be able to relax. So kind of like zebra. I mean, that's a book called Zebra Don't Get Ulcers.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, when they got hunted by a lion, they run.
Right.
But when they're done running, they're relaxing.
Okay.
So should human be like that too.
All right. So focus is something that is really challenged today. As you mentioned, it might be a state that, we have to really work hard towards because generally we're not wired to always be in states of focus.
Yeah.
What is the challenges or what is happening, especially in Asia, that is so challenging or that poses as speed breaks for us in our daily lives to be able to build the states of focus or engineer the states of focus?
I guess there are a couple of things that actually stop us from being able to do this act called focus.
Right.
Right. So number one thing is that there are a bit more of things to look at these days. You have AI generating a lot of data that poses some sort of threat, and that is a distraction. You have social media that propose another type of distractions. Well, that
the biggest.
I would say some people maybe a little bit more than the other. Let's just put it this way. And then on top of that, you have just an insane amount of unreasonable ways that people are forced to be focused. You work 9 to 7 and everyone just have this illusion that, oh, wait, hold on, that 10 hours, I'm going to put 100% of myself in there and focus the whole way. Well, guess what? It doesn't work like that. I mean, the human brain doesn't work like that. And focus itself is a very hard practice.
Right.
It's very energy expensive. So if you don't have break or if you do not have refueling strategy, i.e. eating the right food, or you don't have rejuvenation strategy, which means, i.e. sleep, if you don't prepare your body for it, i.e. workout, exercise, everything fall apart. Because guess what? You're not metabolically healthy enough to even actually provide enough energy for the brain to function in that state. Hence, a lot of people are now being diagnosed with ADHD. Yeah, of course. Granted the fact that now that term becomes so common, everybody's checking their kids whether they have ADHD. But at the same time, there are statistically more people getting more ADHD, 4x actually, in the last 20, 30 years.
And this is no more pertaining to children. Even adults are showing symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of studies been done. Actually, that's a really good book. Audience should be able to check it out as well, called Brain Energy, that I'm actually kind of going through right now.
Right.
It's a bit of a dense read, at the same time, the MD explained quite well how metabolism and mitochondrial dysfunction and how mental disorder are like a triangle, or you can just call it metabolism is kind of similar to mitochondria dysfunction, which also can correlate very well with mental disorder.
Right. So we talked about ADHD. It's a neurological disorder. And for people who don't know what ADHD is, it's basically attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And some of the symptoms that were noticed as someone is diagnosed with ADHD is inability to focus, which is like, one of the topics today. And not just that, but also lack of perspective on time as a result of our inability to focus. Maybe irritability. And also this impulsive reaction that, when I'm supposed to be doing a task, I'm not able to focus on the task, but I'm like, I have to jump on to do that. What is somebody else thinking? Or what's my device saying to me? Or what is it trying to who's texting me? Or what is happening outside in the world? These are all symptoms of ADHD. Now, for viewers, I don't want you to go out there and self-diagnose yourself with ADHD. What we're trying to share here is with some of the symptoms that are prime or showcased as markers for diagnosing ADHD. But let's be honest about it. And this is looking at myself. I show these symptoms, but I'm not saying that, hey, I have ADHD. Absolutely not. That's not something I want you to walk away with from this podcast. But it is concerning, especially when we're living today in a world of cognitive decline. And one of the reasons for it is maybe energy management, where you said the brains are the most energy consuming organ in your body, period. And that is well established. If one is not able to manage that energy, of course, you're not it could be with different protocols that you mentioned, you're basically just not able to allow your brains to function.
Yeah, I might add, as a matter of fact, all the symptoms that you just mentioned,
Right.
you can kind of find very similar symptom for people who actually do not sleep enough.
Wow.
Sleep deprivation actually give you almost identical type of symptom as ADHD. Almost identical. Of
Right.
course, not exactly the same. So a lot of the time that the kids are being diagnosed as ADHD, then you can ask how many hours they sleep. Usually they're not getting enough amount of sleep. Now, this is actually not quoted by me. There are plenty of study that you can consult with your doctor, or you can consult with other books and references on that as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest conversation here is about, I think what we're trying to get to the audience here is the fact that these are symptoms
Yeah.
that actually manifest or showcase in people who are diagnosed with ADHD. But we're living in a world where these symptoms are actually showcasing in adults. And one of the primary reasons, as you beautifully said, which can be another area that we focus on, is lack of sleep. Something that, let's be honest about it, all right? We don't live in that Silicon Valley lifestyle where, what I love about them is, although, there is a work-life balance, let's be honest about it, in the States. Well-respected by organizations, well-respected by individuals, well-respected with respect to a community. In Hong Kong, it's just a talk, which is, it's talked in the boardroom, it's talked as a part of the hiring process. But get onto the table, get to the work, there is nothing. There is no borderline between work and life. And a lot of things that we do in life is also themed or manifested by what has to be done at work. The social interactions that we have after work, maybe a commitment with respect to work.
Right.
Isn't it? Or the conversations that we have at home.
I think that's actually particularly prominent in the Asian culture as well, because so much are being done, not on the table, but at the dining table.
Okay.
If you talk to most of the Koreans, if you talk to a lot of the Chinese, deals are getting done at the dining table.
Yeah.
Not so much on the boardroom table.
Right.
So that also means that being able to get out there, network, social is part of the deal as well. So I think that kind of throw a monkey wrench on anyone's schedule in a sense. So that also kind of throw a monkey wrench to your sleep schedule as well.
Again, going back to the sleep thing, which, is, I completely agree to what you say. You cannot replace sleep with any kind of medication, any kind of caffeine. It is a non-negotiable task that must be done to optimize performance. And to optimize performance or to achieve levels of performance, you must be able to focus. So indirectly, if you're looking at optimizing focus, or if you're in simple terms, what Asians or what we in the Asian lifestyles that we live chase for is richness or success between 9 to 7, which is very much reflective of the happiness that we kind of feel, okay, I've done this. Wow. I'm a happy person. One hack to it is definitely sleep.
Yep.
Where are we going wrong in Hong Kong?
Well, let's just start from the fact that most people do not get enough hours of sleep. Now, I'm not saying that that's a particular hour. I think that's a lot about individuality go into that conversation. Yet at the same time, you cannot tell me that on average 6.5 or less hours of sleep for most of the population in Asia works for everyone else. So that's number one, right? Hours is not enough. Now, okay, granted that hours might not be enough, then that also means one thing. Then the quality need to be superb when you only get 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep. Okay, if you're saying that how many hours that you might need, if you're asking that question, just go ahead and do yourself a favor. Just do a DNA test.
Right.
You can kind of figure it out from there.
Okay.
Most of the DNA will cover that right now. Okay, number one. Number two, now improving the quality of sleep. So how many hours you are on the bed and how many hours are you actually spending in the REM sleep, deep sleep, and light sleep stage are you wasting time in waking up all the time? So those become very important now because you don't get enough sleep.
Right.
So 95%, 95% is like what you're aiming for every night.
Right.
Most Asians might not be knowing any of those numbers or do not have it or actually have alcohol before that. So actually will ruin all of it.
Right.
As a matter of fact. So it's a lot of lifestyle interruptions.
Right. So, I mean, like, let's run away from this fact, like, because it's realistically, I mean, every time I try to drive this point home that, the number of hours, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So then I beautifully love what you said there. Rather than focus on the quantity, if we were to maybe dial into one aspect of it, which is quality, we could maybe manifest not as much that comes with quality and quantity, but hey, we might stand better than where we are today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's when I always focus on effective and efficient sleep. Now, I'm not saying quality is not, quantity is not important. It's super important. But reality is Asian people do not get that many hours of sleep. Statistic will prove it to you. We sleep later and we wake up the same amount or same hours almost. So if that is the case, then focus on the effectiveness, how to get the best out of it.
How do we get effective? How do we make this effective? What are some of the ways that you would recommend?
So I highly recommend to stay away from alcohol after certain hours. Okay. When I say certain hours, I do mean probably after happy hour time.
Okay.
8 o'clock. That might just be the last cutoff. Like it's like a last call at that point.
I think that's doable.
Yeah. And that ought to give you till 11 o'clock. That should be 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah. Like last sip at that time. And also last bite at that time. That should also give you about 3 hours. So before you go to sleep, that 3 hours, no alcohol, no food. That'll be the best to start. And do not go and exercise after 8, 9 o'clock, which I do see a lot in Hong Kong. It's very high in the summer over here. I got that. Yeah, at the same time, you're trying to run at 9 o'clock. You're going to have a tough time to try to even go to sleep at decent 11, 12 o'clock. Or your body just going to be really hot. It takes time for your heart rate to come down enough for you to get into that restful state. And you can see it from the Oura Ring or the Whoop or any other devices that are out there. You're not going to get that restful sleep, the BP that we talked about. Yeah.
Well, when you said that, I felt so guilty because I'm one of those persons who do a lot in the day, but at the same time, like go and do their workout later in the night when I know it is not right. So, hey, I must confess, I'm not the most perfect, but hey, so
isn't everybody.
Everybody, right? There are some things that you do wrong.
Yeah.
But accepting it and then maybe dialing onto other areas where you can work to optimize that day is could be a key.
Absolutely. In that sense, I will highlight, do your HIIT in the morning, just wrap up your heart rate to like 80, 90%. That's fine in the morning. It's actually perfect anyway. Generating all type of oxytocins or dopamine, serotonin in the morning, get yourself up and high. You don't have to have that cup of caffeine. Just wait on that caffeine.
Right.
And then in the evening, maybe try to stay below 70% maximum heart rate or maybe 60%. Maybe do something stretching oriented. If you have to pump some iron, do whatever it is, but just do it slowly and not to engage too much heart rate.
So you say
exercise.
We can very well establish that one of the ways that we can achieve focus by basically eliminating or getting better in a way that we do not manifest symptoms of ADHD, which is inability to focus, is maybe by optimizing sleep.
Yeah.
Ideally, quality and quantity, but hey, if not the quantity, the quality.
Absolutely.
And right, like you rightly said, one of the ways is alcohol.
Yeah.
Giving it a time, a cutoff time. I like that. Happy hour time, 8 o'clock. Cavan says, good, doable. The last bite. Avoiding working out at times later than 9. Some area that I'm working on too, but that's another takeaway that people can go out there and do in order to basically dial in their quality of sleep so they can focus better.
Right. So that's the rest piece that you have to dial in, of course. Along with all that you said, important piece also is a caffeine. That,
right.
Asian people start loving caffeine.
Okay.
They kind of rediscover the caffeine addictions.
Right.
And that is actually one of the bit of an issue is that when people are having that misconcept that focus is something that you get a big block at a time. And the moment they don't get it, they go out and get a cup of coffee.
Right.
And then consuming that much coffee will impact your sleep. Now, of course, everyone would tell me that, no, Cavan, I actually can sleep perfectly fine. Well, guess what? Do a check with any one of those wearable devices out there. Observe when is the lowest heart rate. When does it occur? Does it occur the moment you go to sleep, or it takes some time to reach there? That's your answer right there.
Caffeine, coffee.
Yeah.
I love my coffee. But I think, as you rightly said, a lot of us depend on coffee to achieve an endless state of focus, whereas that is absolutely not the case. And that's absolutely going to maybe have a negative impact on sleep, which helps you to basically focus through the time that you're actually awake.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said, monitoring how much caffeine, does that matter?
Absolutely. I would say so. Now, when I say that, also figure it out yourself, how dependent you are with coffee and how sensitive you are to the coffee. Again, DNA test would help over here. Next, how much coffee can you consume? I would say, let's just say that after 2 o'clock, do not have coffee. It's just a general good rule to follow. And then before that, just try to consume maybe 200 to 300 is still like a normal range, sort of. Anything more than that 300 is a little too much.
Milligrams of caffeine, right?
Milligram.
Okay.
Correct.
So that, for our audience, is about 2 cappuccinos. When you go out there, maybe if you go to Starbucks, it's like a grande, I would say.
Yeah, a grande.
Is that right? 2 grandes?
Yeah. No, 1 venti will be like almost over.
Okay. So maybe go for the, what do you call the small one? I don't know. But
the shorts. As a matter of fact, I actually would like to do this. Most of the time, I trick my body.
Okay.
I think for audience out there looking for tips, right here.
Right.
Trick your body most of the time that you're addicted to the smell of the coffee. Do this blind test yourself. Ask your friend to get involved.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, coffee smell is what you're addicted to, perfect.
Right.
Change it into decaf.
Okay.
And decaf usually only have 1% to 3% most.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a good way to eliminate a lot of the caffeine in your system. Caffeine can stay in the system for more than 10 hours. More than 10. Okay. So just FYI.
Okay, that's a good tool. Like maybe if you find yourself in a state of addiction, which I do at times, maybe what I can resort to, or what the audience could resort to, is like maybe switch to decaf, because the addictive notes basically come with the taste profile and maybe the smells that caffeine brings in, and I think I can very well resonate to that.
Yeah, and a lot of Asians actually love to drink tea. FYI, tea does have caffeine as well.
Right.
It's just not as addictive at times. So I actually love drinking tea.
Okay.
So my morning ritual usually goes like this. In the morning when I get up, get some sun, get my light already, get me up in the morning, and then do a little bit of yoga stretching or yoga movement.
Okay.
Sun salutation tend to help a little bit.
Right.
And then afterward, do some exercise and then come back. Before I start working, I'll have a yerba mate.
Right.
Like a 500 milligram of... But it's 500 milliliters, like half a liter of yerba mate.
Okay.
And that kind of get me through the morning already. And the best part about yerba mate is that a lot of the times I try to stay away from eating in the morning.
Right.
It's just my own personal practice. I'm not really particularly hungry. And yerba mate kind of keep me over until around 11 o'clock, 11:30, and then that's when I have my lunch.
So basically what you're trying to advise audience here is that delay that caffeine intake for as long as you practically can. Personally, I love that. And I think there's compelling science also that actually tells that the ideal time to actually consume your first coffee would be maybe after like 120 minutes of proper waking up. Now, what I mean by proper waking up is like, there's a lot of time when I used to consult with a lot of clients before, they said they were struggling with sleep.
Yeah.
And the first question I used to ask them is, what you rightly said and what you beautifully said was, and what I completely agree to it, is how do you wake up? Because I think the fundamentals of sleep at night is your morning rituals. And the morning ritual is not about getting up, having that cup of tea, and then, saying, thank you for everything in my life. One thing that you actually beautifully said, which I think is like a game changer, is sunlight. to reset your circadian rhythm, which is so key to understanding how to achieve focus by sleeping well.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Absolutely. That is absolutely pretty much what I'm trying to get to is if you try to incorporate all these little tips and tricks into a lifestyle, it becomes a habitual to you. And that no longer require you to think about what you need to get done. That's a lot less stress on just doing the checkbox.
Right.
And that would actually free up a lot of space. So I would recommend everybody to incorporate a certain lifestyle.
Right.
And once you get into that lifestyle, you don't have to practice necessarily. You just kind of be there. You be that lifestyle. You don't go and practice a lifestyle at that point.
So it's more like if you want to build this ability to be able to focus and go out there and chase your dreams, you got to endorse a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yes, sleep is prime, as we've been hammering it down. But again, sleep is not just maybe about like sleep. It's about like, as you beautifully said, how are you starting your day? How are you resetting that circadian rhythm? And that's a huge topic we can talk about in some, and other sessions.
In future,
because that just is another big topic. But coming back to focus now, you're right. What is your take on the impact of nutrition on the ability to focus?
Okay, as we start off,
I love the energy where this is going.
That is the core, the core of the whole thing. Sleep is a very important part because it actually allows us to talk about circadian rhythm. And circadian rhythm, if you spend 1/4 of your life sleeping, then fixing the circadian rhythm over there actually help you to reset everything else, which actually put you back in order first. Once you're in order for that 1/4, then now we need to deal with that three quarters of it.
Right.
And that 3/4 is food.
Wow. Okay.
Not all of them is food, but a lot of it would be talking about food. What type of food are you eating? Are you eating processed? Are you eating a lot of sugar? Are you creating a lot of oxidative stress? Overall, in general, what are you putting in your mouth?
Right.
Yeah.
And what is your take on there's two schools of thoughts. There's one school of thought that says, like a ketogenic diet may improve cognitive performance or the ability to focus. But then there's the other school of thought that actually says, like glucose for the neurons, which says as you rightly said, your brain needs energy. Yeah. It is the largest consumer of energy in your body. So your thought?
I felt like that science has not really definitively say one particular.
Love it.
Food is better than the other type of
Love
food.
it.
I would say that because of the bio-individuality, it's how you are actually utilizing that energy, right? I don't understand how I can just say one is better than the other if I don't understand your Krebs cycle.
Right.
And Krebs cycle, i.e., is how you produce energy.
Right.
So if I don't understand that means there's no reason that I can say one is better than the other. All I'm going to say is try to stay as much processed food away.
Okay.
Try to stay away as much processed food as you can. That would be the best. Yeah. And then sugar, second.
Right.
And if you're Chinese, be careful with what you're eating because a lot of the sugar come in the sauce. Sauce. So if you go, I eat very healthy, and then you start taking picture of what you're eating, you might surprise you. That could come along with a lot of sauce and a lot of white rice. Those are two elements, like just sugar hideaway.
Right.
If you accidentally having a lot of those, that is literally having a lot of sugar in your system.
Right.
And if your body cannot really use up all those energy, now you're forcing your liver to convert it into fat. You're going to store it in your body.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that you're now having metabolic dysfunctions because you're just too much sugar in the system. And it is that part that's going to drive you not being able to focus. And not to mention if you eat that much sugar and if you eat that much white rice, that would make you fall asleep.
Right.
Carbohydrate makes you fall asleep easier.
Yeah.
So if you always come back at lunch and say, oh God, I'm just going to get those off a little bit. That is usually because you have, first, a little too much. Second, probably need to cut down on the carbohydrates.
Right.
Eat a lot more fiber instead and eat a little bit more protein and fat, or healthy fat on that. So those will be a good start. And before I even jump into the deep end of the pool, which is like, oh, which diet is better? Which type of food is better? And I heard about this particular superfood. But guess what? There ain't going to be no enough amount of superfood is going to save you from the glucose intake.
Right. So if someone were to just adopt a lifestyle where they're a little flexible, right? Combine a bit of both, maybe a ketogenic diet, and also have anything under the roof, but keep it real. If focus is your objective, which I think should be, as we said, focus is an art. And 3/4 of our lives, we are awake. And the one thing that we do next to or after breathing is the most that we do after breathing is basically, munching or eating or drinking. So if we were to focus on that, on what we're eating, keep it real, and know if your objective is to achieve that levels of focus or heightened states of focus where you're able to perform, maybe avoid the processed food, sugars that come along with it, and also know the quantities that you're eating. Because, hey, as you rightly said, and it completely agrees in the Book of Science, that if you're going to eat too much, all the blood flow is towards your gut.
Yeah.
And then you naturally go into a state of rest or digest, which tends to take away the ability of the brain to stay alert. Because there are two states, rest or digest or fight or flight. And to stay focused, in many ways, you kind of need a little bit of fight or flight.
Yes. And also, I would actually add on to that. It's more like if you do need that little kick in the afternoon, instead of just grabbing for the coffee, of course, you can trick yourself with a little bit of decaf. Look to involve a little bit more on what you just talked about. Get that activation of the cortisol, and not too much of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So by different type of movement, actually, you can actually get that surge of dopamine, and you can get that serotonin. You want to get that balance. Yeah. At the same time, you don't want to push it over the edge.
Okay.
To be just all about cortisol and a lot of adrenaline, then now you're all frustrated.
Right. So basically, cortisol, or let's put it this way. Basically, you need dopamine and you need adrenaline.
Yeah.
In control states to achieve states of focus.
Yes, exactly. You always it's a tug of war, in physical intelligence, we always talk about the performance pathway, and your axis, you got one extreme is your cortisol, another extreme is DHEA, and DHEA stands for vitality, I apologize.
Okay.
Vitality. And then your y-axis, the top is adrenaline, and the bottom you have acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is more like a recover state, okay?
Okay.
So the best is that you have the most amount of vitality with a control amount of adrenaline.
Right.
That's all. What you just have to, as a matter of fact, I would say that in physical intelligence, that is exactly what we talk about to the leadership team.
Right.
Where are you right now?
Okay.
Get in touch with your feeling. Now, I know a lot of people say feeling is so woo science. Well, guess what? Feeling, emotion dictate how you think.
Right.
And if you're telling me that's woo science, that your entire life could be woo science then.
Wow.
Emotion dictate how we think. And we need to control our emotion. How are you going to control emotion? That means how you can control your hormone and neurotransmitter. The moment you get a feeling on that, you need to trigger into actions. It should be a natural state for you.
Right.
Oh, I feel the frustration. Okay. All of a sudden, your brain goes into thinking, that's a little too much adrenaline. Okay, I got to push it down a little bit.
Right.
A little too much cortisol. I got to push it back down to the other side.
Right.
DHEA.
Right.
So it should be almost naturally like that. That will allow you to kind of always, the positive feedback loop.
Right.
As an engineer, you don't build a system without a feedback loop. That's a guaranteed failure.
Right.
So a feedback loop coming in that sense.
And amazing, this perspective, because that just brings me to my next question, where I went wrong for years thinking this, that from 9 to 7, I should be in states of focus. Mm-hmm. And states of focus, as we discussed, have involvement of chemicals or brain chemicals such as dopamine and also adrenaline in controlled states. With the desire to be focused all the time, there is just so much of dopamine and there is so much of adrenaline in the body, which are not good, and which kind of leads us to maybe even talk about the fact that it is fundamentally wrong for us to think or to even expect us to stay focused for the times that we're awake.
As a matter of fact, there are plenty of science out there. Steve Cutler is like the leading researching group out there. He's not from any university, but he talks a lot about flow state. And flow state, we can talk about it in maybe next time, is essentially is a heightened state of focus to the point that you 4x your outflow, your performance. Most athletes understood this.
Wow.
Most athletes understood this. If you see a tennis player covering up their head, they're getting into the zone.
Right.
They're rituals. And we literally just going to take that page from an athlete standpoint and put it back in the corporate. This is how we're going to get into that state.
Right.
Tennis player, they don't play 10 hours of tennis in a competition immediately.
Right.
Without break. So shouldn't you. That's it.
So it's something that how we got to take this or how we got to approach focus is, like you said, it is an art. But it's an art where you have to maybe accept that there is going to be states of focus.
Yeah.
And then is it right for us to say that there should be times dialed in for defocus immediately after focus states?
I would say adjustment.
Oh, wow.
I would just say adjustment, as I said it. Earlier, if you have so much adrenaline, yeah, you're producing a lot. But guess what? That's an energy balance. There's a cost to it.
Right.
There's always a cost to things that you do. And it's an energy management conversation. So just reallocate that energy into something else to get ready for the next boost of flow. Flow does not happen like one after the other. Every time you go into a flow, that's a lot of energy incurred. And that energy incurred is much more than that focus state as well. That's why the refueling is important. And that's why that rejuvenation state is important. Those are all preparing us for that flow conversation.
All right. So 2 parts of this.
Okay.
One is the rejuvenation part. One is the entry to flow states.
Yeah.
And I think both are important. Now, knowing that flow state is something that can be achieved. And what are your techniques that you tell people in the corporate environment who want to achieve that state of focus for a period of time, or the flow state, as you beautifully said? What are some of the techniques or lifestyle hacks or protocols that you suggest?
Well, as we kind of beat it to that horse already at this point, resting and eating the right food, those are just preparing your body.
Righto.
And then the mind is literally coming down into why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay.
What is your purpose?
Right.
Right. What you're doing is aligned with your purpose. If you haven't figured it out, that's when I come in and talk to my client. Let's figure it out. What is that you're doing right now and how is it lining up to that purpose? We need to have that conversation. That is the intention 2.0 kind of conversations. Is I don't want to coach Nobin to be Nobin 1.0.
All right.
I want to talk to you. I want to shoot for something that's like a 2.0 of you. And that all coming down into how we're going to align that energy resource.
Right.
So that conversation become important is to refocus how you're going to align the energy and get there. And then, of course, sitting down, you're distracted, then start doing something that's a little similar to that, but not exactly. So if you have to write a report, trying to do a little something related to the report and look into one particular area that you really want to focus on, and then you start writing on it.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can't just expect that, in somewhere in the future, you can just sit down and write a report. That just does not happen.
Right.
Because there's no preparations.
Right.
You haven't prepared your body, you haven't prepared your mind to get into that state.
Right. And I wouldn't say this is a science-based protocol, but there are hacks that are actually now being researched on, and hopefully it kind of works. That is kind of like work for me, is maybe to achieve, like you rightly said, we live in a world where we're always seeking out for distractions or fears because, we just want to assess the threat if that's going to harm us. Mm-hmm. Social media, phones, conversations happening next door, or a click on an iPad or whatever, or someone just waving at the other side, when you're having a conversation. These are all distractions. Something that has actually worked for me just recently is listening to the 40 hertz binaural beats.
Yeah.
And I find it, because of the fact that I kind of live a high performance lifestyle with an objective to achieve so much for the time that I'm awake, I find that, dialing in or making a transition from a very distractive environment to a more focused state, the 40 hertz binaural beats work for. And maybe if I'm again in heightened states of distraction, if I can say.
Right.
I kind of listen to sometimes like the brown noise, the pink noise, or even white noise, as they say. And it seems to work.
Yes, and I do agree with you on that. And some people find that sound. Some people find smell.
Right.
Some people find just looking at something. So I would say find something that really works for you from that perspective, because you say binaural beats, and I actually use binaural beat only sometime.
Right.
And the other time I will use opera music.
Right. Wow.
Which is odd for me, right? Yeah. So some other people might find some other rock music that will work really well for them. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I would just kind of take that one step further. If people out there do really want to prepare for them to talk about getting into that focus state, there are devices, there are wearables. And I'm an engineer myself. I'm a big proponent to actually train it through a variety of sciencey gadgets. As a guy too.
Trust me.
So I will use a device like this called Mandy. So it's like an apnea machines on your head. So what it does is to measure how much blood flow that is going through my forehead right now.
Okay.
And that is telling me, or especially when I'm playing this game, it measured how much blood flow. That means how much focus can you get within that 5 minutes of a video game, 10 minutes of a video game. So you learn. It's like a controlled state of learning how to get into focus.
So you are learning to put yourself in states of focus does it help you to actually get into or get better? Do you get better by doing this?
It's like you get, for example, for people who, let's say you don't run, then great. Go out to run that half a mile.
Right.
Maybe like that 1/4 of a mile. Just try it out first, and afterwards you will feel better and you will feel better. Same thing. It's like in the very beginning, focus is a hard thing.
Right.
Because you haven't trained.
Right.
Literally. Let's train.
Yeah.
And that's when I say, that makes it that much easier after you trained it so many times. And you can do it once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. You can play with 3 minutes, 5 minutes. You can adjust the durations.
Right.
So
blood flow and monitoring how long you're actually engaging the prefrontal cortex, if I can say. Is that correct?
It is.
And this is where, I would also want to talk about one thing about what are your thoughts on meditation? I'll share mine, but I want to understand what is your thoughts on meditation as a tool to achieve laser focus states. Because again, I want to use the word states because as one thing that I would want people to walk away maybe from this podcast after talking to somebody like yourself is these are states.
Yeah.
And they don't last for long, and you should not try to make them last for long. They're very high energy states where you want to go into the flow state, get out of it, go into it again. And at the same time, when you're in there, maybe you want to stay there for as long as you can. But knowing the fact that you need to maybe also go to a state of defocus or deflow.
I think one thing, if you talk about Asian audience, is that, meditation is kind of like a woo thing too. No, it's not. Okay? Meditation is a matter of you sitting over there, knowing the fact that you're going to have a lot of thought, but you don't engage with it. That's really what meditation should be about. It's not to think anything. It's not that there should be a white piece of paper in your head. No, none of those. The fact is, do not engage with random thoughts.
Okay.
I.e., you think of red elephant, odd, but red elephant showed up is, interesting, that's a thought, that's it, that's all you do.
Right.
So meditation is like getting yourself to the point that you become so comfortable of an idea, but you don't think much about the idea anymore.
Right.
That itself is like you're trying to stay focused. That itself is almost like a focus practice itself.
Right.
So for a long period of time, that definitely works. Now, that's just a different way of approaching. This is more scientific way of approaching.
Right.
Both way works. Do whatever you find comfort in doing it. If
Yeah.
you're a number-driven person, do this.
Right.
If you're a non-number-driven person, do the other one. Perfect.
I'm super intrigued by Mandy, and something that I would definitely try. But the reason why I asked meditation is because I've, for some reason, adopted meditation into my life after fighting the same battles as you mentioned before, which everybody does. Like, hey, meditation is not for me. It's such a, let's be honest about it, it's such a girly thing, or, like, hey, what am I going to sit and do? But let's be honest about it. I know today when I wake up that I am in so much balance, so much centered, and completely able to focus my energy states to achieve high levels of, or high states of focus by just 15 to 20 minutes of meditation. Now, period. If you're a high performance individual, or if you're an athlete, I think the simplest, cheapest hack to break into super productivity by going through or achieving multiple states or multiple numbers of flow states in a day is by using a tool such as meditation. Because which I think, from what we kind of concluded, or I think that's where the conversation is going, is like you cannot stay focused all the time. Your mind is going to get distracted. But the ability to bring it back to where you want it to be and connecting with those inner states, could be breathing, could be a thought or a feeling of gratefulness, or what you exactly want to be thinking at that time, is a game changer.
Absolutely. And I also have to say that being mindful, or what you call it as meditation, also tie very strongly into how you're feeling, like how you feel in your body. Are you able to build that positive feedback loop that I was talking about?
Right.
Can you talk to your body and see, okay, where in your body are you feeling right now? And once you get that feeling, great. Is that things that we need to do with that particular piece of information? Yes, we do. Awesome. Let's just shift it. Okay, is that movement that we can go in,
Right.
just do something about it? And that's what I always call an on-demand
Right.
stress management techniques that include movement, that include paced breathing, that
Right.
include visualization, meditation, up movement, so-called. So all these works. You just need to find your tools.
And then have it in a way where, based on your lifestyle, you should just be flowing in a way that you could use one if you want to snap into that demand state.
Which exactly is why we call it as an art form.
Right.
Is this really no science? You understand science, but you need to be able to get into and get out of that state kind of smoothly. Kind of
Right.
like surfing. There's really no exact science of surfing. Nobody can tell you. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
And kind of like focus in many ways. And that's why device like this could be great for someone that's just learning.
Yeah.
Once you learn, I kind of get that surfing feeling, the wave pushing me. Perfect. Now you can go on to meditation,
Right.
pace breathing, and all those things will just support more on your practice.
Another topic that you just mentioned, stress. What's the impact of, or what is the benefit of managing stress to be able to focus more?
Immense, because once you are stressed, that changes your emotion state as well.
Okay.
And once your emotion state is changed, that also means your neurotransmitter and also your hormone are changing at the same time. Now we're going back into the performance pathway.
Right.
So when you're stressed, a lot of very typical in Hong Kong or in Asia is probably you work like this the whole day.
Right.
Very simple. Just stand up. Just stand up. It just increase the brain flow to your brain immediately. And that's the quickest way to get you back into that focus state.
Okay.
Immediately. And then afterwards, then you can start opening up your chest, engaging more of the oxytocin, get different state coming back in to support that, and then
Right.
come back down. Okay, good. It sounded like very strategic and protocol-like, but isn't that what ROI stand for? Like you want to, in some way, you really want to do the least amount of things to get the most result, the 80-20.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do. But if you incorporate them into your lifestyle, you don't even think twice. Oh, get up, stretching, get a glass of water, you come back, boom, off you go again. But then I just did 3 things.
Right.
Get up, blood flow,
Right.
stretch a little bit, get more oxygen in my lung, in my head as well, get some more water so I'm not dehydrated, so I can think better. Perfect. Come back down. That's just a lifestyle.
Beautiful, because what you did there was combine some really powerful principles, I would say. As you said, being in a state of stress is basically just, and the faster we realize this, it's kind of better. You can use it as a tool. It's just the chemical state within the body.
Yeah.
As most of the times as false emotions appearing real, which is what I call like fear, false emotions appearing real. And some of the ways you can maybe snap out of it is breath work, isn't it? So basically, that was one ingredient in your whole tool that you said. You stretch out. And I truly believe in this, and there's compelling science to this too, that, something that Tony Robbins talks about great is about the power pose, where you stand up as a superhero, and that itself drives in dopamine, brings in adrenaline, brings in the happy hormones of achievement, even when you might not even have it. So you are basically channeling or re-engineering your body chemical states to achieve what you want to, irrespective of what you could be feeling.
Exactly. And all this become, like in the beginning, you learn it as a theory, and it becomes a science in your head, and it becomes a particular lifestyle you can start adopting, and it become part of who you are. And all of a sudden that it just click, and it become like a surf.
Amazing.
So that's how it ought to be, and that's why I say focus, peak performance is really what I'm really interested in, because everything that I learned is a supporting piece, and then until the final masterpiece come through is all these moments of flow. Just like the conversation that we are talking right now. We're just building it up, and everything just kind of crescendo.
Right. Now, Cavan, we talked about stress. We talked about states of focus. We live in a lifestyle where we have ample stress, and we try to focus on so many things, which is practically impossible. You have worked with so many high-performance individuals, both at corporate levels and also from an entrepreneur level. And something that is popping out more than ever are people being in states of burnout. Although it's a fancy word, but it's basically... Okay, let me ask you this. What is a burnout state? Or what are these states that is manifesting in people?
I would say that burnout is what it's on someone's mind right now.
Right.
Yeah, at the same time, it's really more when someone is overstressed for a significant period of time that it become a physical manifestation of that stress, of that overdrive.
Right.
And that's what we call it like a burnout.
Right.
So once you get into that state, no longer that is everything that is about personality anymore. A lot of the time is about you either not eating or eating too much, or you having heart palpitation. Is a very, very serious one.
Right.
And
these are symptoms, right?
Symptoms.
Okay.
Now we talk about symptoms. Before it could be like, oh, that person just withdrawn.
Right.
That person is just agitated.
Right.
That person just, that emotion eruption. What is that about? So there's a lot of that. Prior to that state.
Right.
But then once you get into burnout, that's when you start eating a lot, or you stop eating a lot, or stop eating much, and then headache, bloating, and heart palpitations. These are just some of the basic ones. Losing hair.
Oh, wow.
That become pretty serious of a conversation as well.
So how can we avoid ourselves from reaching these states of burnout? So let's put it this way. We understand that burnout is a state that is possible, and it doesn't take, in our crazy busy Asian lifestyle, too much to get there. For example, let's say, let me put it this way. Let me ask you this. Have you been in states of burnout?
Okay, so first of all, I run my own business, so I've probably been through multiple burnout.
Wow. Would you like to share?
Yeah, in the last 8 years, I've been through at least 3 burnout. 2 of them led me into the hospital.
Wow.
And it go from as simple as I was just working out too much, or it could, one of them was working out too much.
Okay.
That was working out too much. I get into a lot of work stress at the same time.
Right.
And I accidentally hurt my back. That was my first time I hurt my back. That led me to a hospital.
Wow.
And that was because of one silly move.
Of working out too much?
Of working out too much is my body is actually breaking down.
Okay. And that you would have maybe done, which many people, including myself, do, like, especially when we are stressed a bit too much, we try to go and work out thinking that workout is the solution and is our gateway to open up possibilities of de-stressing.
which is true to a certain extent. But then if you don't have that control of your body as it should have, then as that little momentum go a little too far, snap.
Wow.
That was what happened to me.
Okay.
And that was my first time I hurt myself in my back. And of course, that became a weak point for me, and it just happened to me multiple times.
Right.
So my second time is the same thing. The third time, that is more related to my heart palpitation that I was talking about. So it's kind of odd that you do not actually feel that the rest of the day, and the only time you actually feel it is when you're at night. Maybe that was when I would lie down. I become very quiet. I start paying attention to my body a bit more. And my heart rate is fine. But it's just the amplitude. Every time my heart is pumping, I can feel it.
Right.
Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. And I'm like, what is going on? But it's not fast. I look at my watch. It's just heart rate is fine.
Wow.
But the palpitation is the issue. So that is another manifestations.
Right.
Yeah.
So how can one engineer themselves to build some resilience towards burnout?
Well, I think really important is that now, even if you don't have the heart palpitations, you need to start listening to people. I know at that particular point, no one really want to listen.
Okay.
Because you're already gone through the process of withdrawal at that point.
Right.
You might be substance abusing already.
Okay.
But when people coming to you and start talking to you, that's when you actually think about, oh, maybe that is some validity to it. I need to address that.
Right.
Because that's very important. But because only at that stage, then you're willing to go out and ask for help.
Right.
And that was exactly what happened to me.
So basically, we get into these states of losing,
shutting off.
Yeah, conscious with our own feelings in our body and not knowing that we're in this state. And maybe the best resort at that time is the family or the community that is around us, who also we kind of tend to detach in such states of emotions, if I can say.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, at that point, you pretty much by yourself anyway.
Right.
Your tribe, no longer your tribe.
And then it becomes so much more difficult to get unstuck from that situation.
Exactly. And that's usually when the intervention need to take place. But of course, the hardest part is how you're going to get that person to talk to somebody.
Right.
So this is a bit more on the Asian side of things now.
Okay.
So when that happened, if the company come in and intervene and say, okay, you need to see a psychologist or whatever that might be, that is going to be a complete block because the stigma that associate with seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist. Another better way to go about it, I find it, would be a high-performance coach, a performance coach, or a health coach.
Right.
That type of conversation coming in because I have no problem. That person will only think about I have no problem.
Right.
Even though there's many telltale signs already.
Right.
From that moment on, we can actually talk from a perspective of nutrition. We can talk about something that is really not related to that particular person's personality because they are enclosed. They don't really want to talk about my personality. I have no problem with my personality. Yeah.
And so you think that there are interventions that is possible. I love the word intervention because that's like you have to say, hey, I need to take control and I need to take some actions. And you said maybe a good thing to do would be to work with a coach or with it can be a high-performance coach or a functional medicine coach.
Yes, exactly.
Now, just for the sake of our audience here, are there some protocols or some science-based protocols or hacks that you would say that we can use to maybe get out of a borderline state of burnout? Let's say we identify as part of listening to this podcast. And I say, okay, I need to take some actions to see if this gets better. Else I can work with a coach.
Got it.
If it is some actions that I can take, what are some of the actions that I can take to do something before it's too late?
Right. So just talk about something super simple. If you are completely withdrawn, if that's you, or if that you start paying attention to what you're eating is all junk, maybe if that's okay with you, start looking into replacing that type of junk food with the whole food first.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say nutrition and the body weight approach, that conversation is going to be a lot easier because clearly at that stage, I'm not even talking to that person anymore. Coming in, I'm only communicating with 3 parties: your blood sugar level, your hormone,
okay,
and your gut microbiome.
Wow.
And also, all those 3 states are completely in disarray. You are a resemblant of those 3 states. And I'm just coming in and trying to negotiate with them.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a health coach or as a functional nutrition practitioner, that's when I come in and say, okay, let's have a conversation on what are some of the things that we can start introducing to eat.
Right.
And get you to a different state first. I wouldn't even bother explaining too much into the detail, because at that point isn't so much about the detail, it's a lot about executions.
Okay.
Once you get out of that state, then we can start talking about something else, because now it's more like you coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really great the way you put it with respect to burnout. And I think we all at some point reach those states. And it's always good to know that, hey, maybe this could be it. And then I could always have somebody that I could work to. So, well, Cavan is a great high performance coach that works with a lot of leading brands in Hong Kong. So if you find yourself stuck in any of these states or even a question, I think you can give Cavan a call.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of important to look for someone that to give you the assistance in many ways, because at that particular point, there's so much blind spot.
Right.
And if you're just talking from a kind of mental angle, yes, it will work, but it's just not a very good ROI over there.
Yeah. And I think in that state, I love the word that you use, negotiation. It's negotiation, because when you're in those states, the last thing you want somebody telling you is, hey, do this. Hey, do this. But instead, if you have a negotiative approach where you are kind of like playing a game to get somebody to a better state, that you can have a conversation where they actually understand. Because many times when you're in a state of burnout or like fatigue, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
And all you want to do is like be by yourself and do those things that actually release maybe all these brain chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin in ways that is not beneficial for you long term.
I would say that if possible, if that is our listener, perhaps to have your loved one to come along with you, maybe one person that can help you along the way, to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Because that particular conversation is really not a one-person job a lot of the time at that point, because you already reached that state that you need to have assistance, and let's just have a tribe on that really accountability conversations.
Yeah. I guess that's another thing in the Asian market of the community that we live in, that we want to portray ourselves as superhumans. And many a times we have to understand even the best of superheroes have their falls.
Absolutely.
And knowing that falls and picking themselves up again and re-engineering their life is what makes them a superhero.
And I think you so perfectly say that in the Western world, kind of portray the leadership was the Superman or like the Batman back in the 90s. Of course, the West actually kind of moved on from that particular persona, but it was so ingrained in Asia. Even 2024 these days, they are still thinking that they are the Superman. And no, we are not Superman. Yeah. And guess what? The way that you treat yourself as a Superman does not even communicate with your Gen Z, which is, by the way, the majority of your corporation as well.
Right.
So that doesn't work, that leadership strategy. So let's start thinking about the gap from your corporate conversation perspective as well. That's very important.
Right.
So not only are you talking about individual, we're talking about an individual who are a leader which lead a organization.
Righto.
And that is very important. And that's one of the reasons why I love working with leaders, because the moment that we come along with a strategy, it doesn't just impact one person.
Wow.
That person can impact at least hundreds of people, because it's not just the employee, but employee's family, employee's friends and friends. So that circle is just so much bigger. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing that type of work.
And I can see the passion flow, Cavan. It's amazing. We love your work. Summarizing this whole beautiful conversation that we've had, is basically understanding that flow is focus.
Focus, yeah.
Is a state of flow. Mm-hmm. And they are to be worked towards bettering And there are so many tools out there that people could use, like nutrition, sleep, simple power pose, as you said. Stand up, get out there, get that breath in, go for that walk, because that basically can even function as like, the defocus element that we said, just leaving it there. And also one thing that I would like to highlight is that during the defocus, one thing that doesn't work for me, because I've been really working on this defocus element, is like having a phone with you. Because today's technology and phones is just another pile of information which is draining.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, by the way, if you don't mind, I kind of go back a little bit. I want to highlight one thing. Focus is a big term, and flow is like a specific state, like the very, very heightened state of focus.
Wow.
It become like a flow. Not every time we go into focus, it become a flow. But then if you go enough times into the focus state, you experience flow, like the time that you forgot about how time goes.
Right.
That is a flow state. So,
as we are kind of in this podcast,
yeah, exactly,
talking about so much of wealth of information that you've actually shared with us today. I mean, I can only be grateful, and so will the audience, for helping us to understand this whole concept of focus and also flow, and also some of the tools that you shared today, and also some biohacks like the Menti device. I think is an amazing tool that people could resort to better focus states or reach heightened states such as flow states, or maybe just practice meditation and use power pose and other techniques of optimizing sleep maybe.
Yeah, ultimately getting more done in less time.
I love it. That's exactly what every Asian wants to get done, including myself.
Everybody.
Thank you so much, Cavan. It was a pleasure having you on board.
Thank you very much for having me.